All right. Thanks, Stuart, man. I'm really happy that you took time to join me in this conversation today. It's going to be great for our listeners, dude, to get to hear from one of the members inside of Legacy Farmer and just to kind of have a good conversation here. So if you would, man, just kind of share, start off, share your name, where you live at, and then let's get into the description of your operation and everything. We'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Stuart Dill. I live in Southwest Missouri. My wife and I run a cow-calf operation, and we also have chicken barns, and we sell specialty eggs.
Yeah. How many chickens do you have go through on an annual basis?
10,000 at a time.
Okay. So you got quite the operation there, and then you got a full team too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have 2 employees right now, and we also just started a skid steer business and doing custom work on the side with that. So
Yeah.
trying to get that up and going along with everything else.
Okay, cool, man. Well, let's see. What are some of the biggest challenges and stuff that you faced running the operation and everything? Like what's been your experience over the past decade? Biggest challenges you've been through, biggest things you've had to overcome. Like let us know what Stuart has been through, because that's what's going to connect with the listener a lot.
Oh man. So I guess you go back 10 years, man, I've been through a lot. In my early 20s, I had some addiction issues, alcohol and drugs. So
Mhm.
go back 10 years and, thankfully January 1st, 2014, I decided to screw my head on straight and kind of get my life together. 5 years ago, I moved back here we've always had this land here in Missouri, but we hadn't always lived here.
Mhm.
And 5 years ago, I decided I was going to be self-employed come hell or high water. And so I moved back so we could build these chicken barns. And we started that. It was me and my dad. And then, 2 years ago today, I lost my dad. He had passed away. And at the same time, 11 days before that, my grandpa died too. So
Yeah.
there in a 2-week time period, my world got flipped upside down.
Well, and I remember, man, you came into Legacy Farmer March of 2020. So
Yeah.
you were about, let's see, that was about 9 months or so after those two significant life changes happened. So kind of describe, man, what were the feelings and everything that was going through you over those 9 months? Like, cause you got all of a sudden now you had this big operation dumped on your shoulders. You had all this responsibility now dumped on your shoulders. You had a team to run. You're used to having your dad and your grandpa there for counsel and to talk to and to work with. What was going through Stuart's head over those 9 months?
Man, a lot. It was because, to back up a little bit before that, they really they really kind of set the sails on the big picture of things, and I basically ran the day-to-day operations.
Okay.
So, I was good at getting up early and working past dark, and not sleeping a whole lot and just grinding it out. So losing those two, man, you just had to take over. Immediately I had to take over everything, tax planning and along with, just the day-to-day operations. So the emotions of that were very tough at times. Thankfully I made a decision, as soon as that happened. Like, I knew that I was going to have to step up and level up. And so I knew it was going to be different than just waking up early and working really hard. Like, all of a sudden I had to take on this whole new role. And so I was just, the emotions of trying to figure all that out when all of a sudden you don't have any guidance anymore is tough. Depressed, angry, sad, trying to grieve. Plus I'm also the oldest child. So, like, I had to take over my dad's estate and get that all settled. And my goodness, dude, when you're grieving and you got to spend hours a day on the phone with attorneys and banks, and, that stuff takes a toll on it, because you really don't have time to grieve. You just got to go to work.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of farmers and ranchers, as you know, right, just dude, like from 300 members inside of Legacy Farmer, we know how many of them have actually went through and set up a full estate plan and actually have a game plan, because there's one certain or couple certainties in life, taxes and death, right? We all know
Right.
our time's going to come. So what was it like for you? Because your dad did not have anything set up, right?
No, my dad did not have anything in place. I mean, not even a will written on a piece of paper in his dresser. I mean, he absolutely had nothing in place. And just to speak on that, I mean, you got to think about when you die. I mean, if your estate's more than a lawnmower, like you need something in place because it just puts so much more on the people that are left behind, especially the person that has to take that over. And especially if you think if you got kids and you got a significant operation, well, they're gonna have to take over the whole operation. Plus, they've got to deal with settling your estate. And I mean, I don't really know how I did it, just through force of will, and just, but
But
yeah.
and the thing is too, but let's talk about the emotional challenges there because you had to essentially relive the experience, right, of losing your dad and your grandpa for how long? How long did it take you to settle his estate?
Uh, it wasn't settled when I joined Legacy Farmer. I think we settled it. So I mean, it was a solid 10 months.
Yeah. Of just having to go back and forth with lawyers and literally relive it over and over.
Absolutely.
How much easier, dude. And we talk about estate planning. You've been through some of the trainings inside of Legacy Farmer. A lot of people, man, even just having a will in these small towns, man, people think that the will is all they need.
Yeah.
Right. You've learned firsthand that that's not even close to the case.
Right. And wills, I mean, wills differ by state. Like in the state of Missouri, a will doesn't hold any water.
Yeah.
Anybody can contest a will. So I mean, you got to have strategic trust in place.
Yeah. And actually have a full game plan. Well,
Yeah.
so, you think about that. Why do you think your dad or your grandpa didn't take the steps to get that stuff set up? Do you think it's because they didn't want to, or literally because they didn't have the information or education available to them or know where to find it to actually know the step-by-step process to getting that stuff put together?
So my grandpa had it in an estate trust set up, thankfully. The reason my dad didn't, he told people that he didn't want to pay an attorney to do it.
Which is another way of saying what?
I just don't want to.
I just don't want to. We'll
Yeah.
deal with it later.
Yeah.
Oh man. And that's what's funny, man. That's the mentality and that's the attitude of a lot of farmers and ranchers and ag business owners today. The other piece though, too, is do you think your dad at some level struggled or feared having to have conversations with you kids? Right. Cause how many siblings do you have?
Two.
Two. So do you think he struggled with like having to try to figure out how do I divvy this up between my kids without making any one of them mad? Do you think he struggled with that at all or no?
I mean, that certainly could have been part of it.
Yeah.
um, and probably was actually.
Yeah. Well, and that's just the thing. And the reason I bring that up is because that's what's come up, as you know, with a lot of our members. And they're, at the end of the day, we want to treat our kids fairly. But if you have one that's actually stayed back, taken over the operation, you have two that moved off and did different things. No fault to them. Everybody should get to choose to live their own life. But as a parent, trying to figure out how to divvy that up. And then it's sometimes easier to avoid the conversation, but the cost of avoiding it after you're gone hits your kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to the kids because I don't have any, but I can speak to the survivor that was the one that had to deal with
Yeah.
everything.
Well, for sure. And you and Kayla are already going through steps to get your entire estate plan set up right now, aren't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are actively in the process of setting up a trust.
Yeah. And what age are you guys?
I'm 34 and she's 29.
Yeah. So at 34 and 29, you're going to have a full estate plan put together, and there is going to be a system in place for the day that you guys do pass away to where everything is easier on your kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about just jumping in from working in the day-to-day operation, man, to now having to handle all the stuff that comes with actually running a business on the back end. Like, describe that experience a little bit.
Oh man. So I'm the kind of guy that has pieces of paper and numbers scribbled everywhere because that's just the kind of guy I am. I mean that's whatever it is, I can scribble it out on a piece of paper. And before it didn't really matter whether it was organized or not because I wasn't the one handling that stuff. So to transition from somebody that has notebook paper scribbled everywhere to a real system in place, whether it's filing cabinets or your desktop setup, so where you can find documents and just check the bank statements and paying bills online. I mean, it's a full circle, and it's no different than, if you don't patch your fence and the cows get out on the road, it just causes problems.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your office order, I mean, this is a business. I mean, it's and really, you look at the scope of these kind of things. I mean, most of the people in the ag business have asset portfolios of $1 million at least. So I mean, you got to treat it like a business and run it like a business. And so learning to come into the office and make decisions, based on the financial facts of the business. Yeah, I mean, that was a learning curve. But definitely helped me through, gaining that knowledge and that system has just, I mean, it's probably saved me hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in the long run.
Yeah. Well, to learn it too at age 34, man, because you and I both know, we have members come into our group that are in their, mid 40s to 50s who have operated for the last 3 decades with no system in place. And they're literally still scribbling shit on pieces of paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you think about the magnitude of the mistakes that they've made over the years and how much that's cost them and just how much cash is bleeding through the cracks on an annual basis too.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about how is legacy farmer, and we talk a lot about the personal side, which I know that's part of the reason you came into is you needed systems and tools to kind of push past and level up, like you talked about, right? New version of Stuart was gonna have to come out, right? In order to lead, now all of a sudden you're leading the team. You're no longer the kid working on the operation. You're the guy in charge. You're responsible for other people's livelihoods. You got to go through all this estate planning and entity structure and tax planning and all these different problems that come up with running a business. So how has Legacy Farmer assisted you in learning all of those business tools, systems, and processes, and really just, dude, fine-tuning your numbers and knowing where you're at financially and making decisions based off of facts and not emotion?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's helped tremendously with the tools that we have, like, Farmer Metrics. Obviously, your experience in the banking industry has helped a lot. Just knowing what that world is like.
I'm curious. Why is that? Because a lot of the members say that. I've never asked any of you guys why is that good for you that I had experience in the bank?
Well, I think so many of us just go into the bank and we feel like we're lucky to have somebody to work with us. And it's like, especially, especially those guys that are running like big lines of credit. Well, I mean, when the bank renews it every year, you almost feel like, oh, gee, I'm so lucky. When really you're the one with the assets, so they should be the lucky ones. And when you break those numbers down and understand exactly where you're at from an asset to debt ratio, like it just changes your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like with me, man, and I mean, and I say this on some other podcasts and stuff too. I describe myself. I'm kind of like the rebel loan officer, right? I'm the guy that's going out and going from one side of the fence to the other. It's like there's two wars happening between the bank and the farmers, and I'm switching sides. So, what has that been like for you? Learning how the bank, me explaining to you and sharing with you how the bank makes decisions, what are the key numbers they're looking at, how we can actually take back power and control and put the leverage in our favor.
Well, I think for me, mainly it's a confidence issue.
Okay.
Instead of, walking into the bank and being like, oh, gee, I hope they don't foreclose on me this month. It's like, okay, like I'm in the driver's seat on this deal. Like if they want to work with me, great. But I have the information to find somebody that will work with me.
Yeah.
And I'm not worried about finding somebody or getting fired. Like I have the info.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you talk about that like that's a huge shift for you mentally.
Oh,
Like there's no longer walking into the bank with this scarcity mindset, hoping and praying that they renew you. You're walking in and you know for a fact that you're a grade A credit. You know exactly what numbers they're looking at. You know how their game is played.
right.
And it's no different than the NFL, right? You're studying game tape of the other team and learning all their systems and their plays. It's no different than what we're doing in Legacy Farmer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we just in this business, just naturally, you do so much business with the bank, but for whatever reason, people just don't want to understand how the bank works.
Yeah. Yeah. And how the business actually runs and what their profit is. Cause I've shared with you guys like what the actual profit is and what
Yeah.
the actual return on investment is with banks.
Yeah.
And once you understand how they operate and how they make money and where the leverage position is, I mean, and to be honest, man, like with you guys, a lot of our members now, they're walking into the bank and they know more about the banking industry than their loan officer does that they're working with.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird dynamic that we can actually walk in there and take back all power and control.
Right.
So, okay, man. Well, kind of what's been your experience? Because you came into Legacy Farmer March of 2020. What were your expectations then?
Oh,
What was Stuart looking to gain?
so I've always read and kind of followed, big like Wall Street type CEOs and stuff. And I mean, those guys all are part of coaching and mentoring. And my dad had talked about people that he knew that had coaches and mentors. And so honestly, for several years, I was kind of like, man, that'd be kind of nice to have. I bet that would help a lot. And so when I found Legacy Farmer and joined it, what were my expectations? I really thought we'd probably be sitting down and talking about planting corn and weaning calves more often than we do.
Yeah.
But any of those expectations were gone pretty quick.
Yeah. So what did you actually get though when you came in though? What was your experience like? What did you actually get?
Oh, personal development first and foremost.
Okay.
Obviously through all the tragedy and emotion that I'd gone through, there was a lot of that stuff that I really had to unpack and deal with that I didn't know how, didn't really have the tools. And so obviously with the tools that are available, like the stack and just the community of the coaching calls and being able to really, kind of put those emotions to rest
Mm-hmm.
and learn more about myself and how I operate, then I could really piece together the business side of things.
Yeah.
Because if your personal life is crap, your business is going to be chaotic as well.
Yeah. If you're not in control of yourself, then you're not going to be in control of anything else. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Right. Well, man, so like a lot of people, they come in and the biggest difference between legacy farmers, yes, we're focused a lot on the business stuff, right? And making sure we're solving business problems and sharing that stuff. But when you think about all the community boardroom calls and coaching calls we've had with our group and everything, what's been more valuable? Has it been the personal challenges and learning from people's personal situations that they're going through, or has it been the business challenges?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely the personal side of things and just learning how to navigate the emotions of life and and just how to handle yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we all have tragic situations, and just how do you allow those not to control you and who you are, but to really control them. I mean, a business is just numbers, but emotions are a tricky situation, and
Yeah.
you've got to figure those emotions out and how to navigate them so they don't affect everything else.
Well, and the thing is too, is like fixing, like, dude, like breaking down numbers, putting all your numbers in farmer metrics, learning what the bank's looking at, learning where your leverage positions are with the bank, and just learning how you can make decisions based off of the numbers and know where you're going to be at the end of the year instead of, taking all your receipts into the accountant at December 1 and saying, figure out what I need to spend before the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
That's the easy stuff. Like that's the tactical stuff. That's the non-emotional stuff that we can just work through. But
Right.
as you've learned, and as I've learned, you can give somebody all the business knowledge in the world, but if they're not good up here in the 6 inches between their ears and they're not focused there, and we're not working on that too, doesn't even matter.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the most profitable business in the world, but if you're not in control of your emotions and your relationships are crappy and out of whack, like nothing else matters
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Well,
it'll fall apart really fast.
yeah. And it's not because the business is broken. It's because somebody else is broken.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just kind of interesting, man, because in our small towns where you and I grew up, I mean, self-development or personal development was like kind of one of those things where you're like, man, yeah. I mean, I don't know why you would do it. Why would you do it? Why do you need personal development and crap like that? Right. But when we think about it, right, and I want to get your input on this because, kind of the sequence that we look at is your thoughts drive all of your beliefs drive all of your actions drive all of your results. And if we're not fixing issues at the thoughts stage, then the rest of it's broken.
Right.
Right. So with a majority of farmers and ranchers, what type of thoughts do you think are running through their heads most days? Positive or negative?
I'd say mostly negative.
Yeah. Well, where were you at? I mean, the 9 months before you came into Legacy Farm, where were you at most days?
Oh, all over the place.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, it was hard to control and rein in the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, so looking into Legacy Farmer, because you're renewing with us for a second year now. You moved up to our Legends group and working more one on one with me and everything. Dude, I'm just kind of curious of your viewpoint on what are some of the biggest things that have happened over the past year, whether it's like listening to somebody else on a boardroom call, or maybe it's one-on-one conversations you and I have had, or maybe it's just getting all your numbers into farmer metrics and knowing where you're at. Like, what were some of the milestone things that made you say, like, man, yeah, this is absolutely worth every penny that I'm choosing to invest here?
Oh, so when you first come in and you get all the training courses and like, spend a couple months on that, and you really, if you do it right, you learn a lot about yourself
Mhm.
and why you are the way you are and why you do things the way you are. So that was a big milestone. And then getting everything into farmer metrics and really like dialing in the business side of things, that was another big milestone. And
How did that feel though for you, man? When we got that done for you and you and I met, went through it, understood exactly where it was at, you started learning more about how the bank operates and makes decisions. Like, what did that do for you mentally?
oh, it was so freeing because there was just such a boost of confidence.
Okay.
Like like instead of just trying to hustle, another $1,000, just to say you did that month, like you can really step back and say, okay, what's our strategic business plan to be where we want to be in 10 years?
Hmm.
Like, what are we going to do? Are we
Yeah.
going to, create something else off the farm? Are we going to expand what's already here? Plug in the holes, in the last 6 months, I went through all the bills and plugged all the leaky gaps. So, I mean, we're not bleeding money where we don't need to. We've, I mean, it was just a huge confidence boost.
Yeah. I remember, I remember when we got it done and you looked at, you and I met and you're like, man, I feel so much more like I finally feel like a legit business owner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Which is probably which is probably how a lot of the members feel when they first do this. Cause a lot of them are like you beforehand, scribbling stuff down on pieces of paper inside your truck. And that's your bookkeeping.
Yeah,
that's your strategic game plan for this multi-million dollar operation that you're running here.
absolutely. Yeah. And then when the accountant asks for something, you just give her a number.
And you have no idea
That's,
what it was.
I don't know. Yeah.
And a lot of people too, a lot of the members, they're really like some of them are really frustrated with their accountants, right? But how many of them were just giving their accountants absolute like just bullshit information, completely disorganized, and they're expecting their accountant to like create magic out of nothing.
Yeah. Oh, I think a lot of us. I mean, if everybody was being honest, it's probably 98% of them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh shoot. Well, man, so inside a legacy farmer, like what do you see out of everything that we do? What do you find as being the most valuable?
Oh, I mean, the coaching calls are great in the community, and just, because you get to understand you're not alone. Everybody has tragedy in their lives, whether it's divorce or bankruptcy or death or,
Mhm.
dealing with a dysfunctional family. I mean, we all kind of have our issues, but I mean, we're all here to get better. Like there's absolutely no egos involved in the coaching calls. Like nobody cares how much corn you planted or how many cows you have. Like whatever. Are you here to get better? As long
Yeah.
as you're here to get better and you can push somebody to get better or give them a piece of advice and take the same. I mean, that's all that matters. It's just it's such a community that's just built on getting better.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like, we're all from small town communities where everybody takes care of everybody, right? But in those small town communities, we can't really talk about the real issues going on inside of personal life that we really need to discuss, or business for that matter.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, like every excuse in the world to go down to the local bar every night, and everybody would let me just cry on their shoulders, but nobody would be like, okay, what's your tax strategy for this year?
Yeah. Or just to get you back in the game.
Right.
Right. Like, okay, we get that you're going through a trial, like definitely a very hard time. So I can either sit here and let you drink yourself to death and go down that route, which we know you shouldn't, or I can say, okay, great. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hold space for you, and we're going to work through this, and I'm going to give you some tactical tools to work through the stories on this because it's consuming your life right now. But
Yeah.
then eventually, like, it's going to be time to get back in the freaking game and let's go make things happen, because Stuart didn't really have a choice.
No, no choice.
Either get back in or fail, and that's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those are the only two choices.
What do you think? Man, losing your dad 2 years ago today. You go 9 months before you come to Legacy Farmer. If you'd had kids at home, man, what type of father do you think they would have been getting during those 9 months?
Oh, probably wouldn't have been getting much of one.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I probably would have been emotionally absent or just an absolute basket case.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, obviously we're stressed the hell out, right? Tons of different stuff going on. And the reason I bring that up, man, is because how many other farmers and ranchers that have not worked on self-development or don't have access to these tools or don't have anybody in the world that they can like that actually understands them, that they feel like they can talk to. How many of them do you think are showing up like just raging a-holes to their spouses and kids at home?
Oh, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you talk about one of the greatest tools we have is the stack. And you know what that does? It helps you break down your emotions and just systematically break them down and understand what the root cause is.
Mhm.
And when you figure that out, it releases the rage, and then you don't have to take it out on the people that you're closest to. Because one of the downfalls of this industry is you spend so much time by yourself. So then you go home to your wife and your kids, and like there's the punching bag.
Yeah. You
Because you can yell at the combine all you want, but it don't care.
you can yell in the tractor cab or whatever you're driving all you want, but it's not going to do anything for you.
Absolutely.
Shoot. Well, and that's the thing, man, is you think about the amount of time that a majority of our members sit alone all day. And again, we go back to thoughts creating everything. If the thoughts are not on point there and you're not controlling those things, what is ultimately going to happen?
Well, dysfunction and chaos is going to take over.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, what are some of the other big breakthroughs that you've witnessed other members go through? I'm just kind of curious, kind of other milestones that you've seen other members hit and things like that inside of the network.
Oh man, well, I think probably I don't know any specific ones for sure, but there's been a few guys come in, with marriages on the rocks and stuff like that, and they seem to get their home life and their family life in a way better situation, and honestly, that's more admirable than anything else.
Yeah.
The guys there's guys that have shown up in the Legacy Farmer just because they were tired of working 18 hours a day and they wanted to spend time with their kids,
Yeah.
and that's an honorable endeavor right there in itself. So I think, business side, I mean, that's just it's just numbers on the business. But when you can get your home life in order and make your family a stronger unit, there's lots of those guys in this group.
Well, and why do you think they're working 18 hours a day? Like they're stressed out. They come in, they're stressed the hell out. They're trying to figure out, how do I get do better with time management? How do I free myself from this business? Because a lot of our members, they've built their businesses around them, not without them. Around them, not without them. So why do we do that?
Because it's what we've been taught. I mean, that's what the generations before us did.
Mhm.
I mean, my grandpa was the same way. Like my dad, as a kid, before he went to college, he spent one night away from the farm. I mean, my grandpa, I mean, he worked really hard and he didn't spend any money.
Mhm.
I mean, he was very successful in his own right. Um, but I mean, that's just what we've been taught, is to work hard, don't spend your money, and get up early and work hard again.
Yeah.
And so we just don't have, nobody's ever taught us to, hey, build these systems within your business so you can go take your family to the lake for the weekend.
Yeah. And get other people in there to help you find the profit points so you can actually afford to hire people to join your team and work with you and free up some of your time.
Absolutely.
But then what's crazy though, man, is then when we get those members that do free up their time and they go take those vacations, while they're on vacations, they're trying to battle the stories of, man, I got to be working right now.
Absolutely.
And the stress is back.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the world's worst. Like if I'm within 300 miles of the house, like I'm not relaxed.
Well, because it's just a short drive away though, too. I can be there in 5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If something goes wrong, I'll be there to take care of it.
Oh, it's pretty crazy, man. Pretty crazy. Well, man, so what has been just trying to think through here, something good to ask you here to end us off here. Biggest piece of advice that you could give to somebody that's, listening to this podcast right now, they resonate with your story, they resonate with the stress and the challenges that you've been through, resonate with, just every ounce of who Stuart is and what he does. What's one piece of advice you could give them on solving their challenges or maybe stepping outside their comfort zone? Cause maybe they're uncomfortable when it comes to stepping into places like this or whatever it may be. I'm just kind of curious what your feedback would be there.
Oh man. You've got to just make the decision to grow and to move because nobody's going to do it for you. It's not going to just happen. Like you got to make the decision to move your feet and join a group like Legacy Farmer or any other coaching groups that are out there. But you've got to make the decision to grow because it's not going to happen. And if you don't make the decision to grow, then you're by default making the decision to go backwards.
That's so freaking true too. And like, I hope the people listening to this understand the magnitude of what you just said. If I choose not to step forward and to grow, I am by default choosing to go backwards.
Yeah. It's cliche, but it's so true.
It's so true. And we had one of our members that came in 2 weeks ago, went through, got farmer metrics, everything set up, got a entity structure plan built out and getting that implemented with him. And he's went through just some of the coaching calls, like just some of the ones that we have recorded, which we have, hundreds of hours now of those. And his biggest thing was, he goes, if I would have had access to this information a year ago, it would have completely changed the decisions that I made in the past year. And he goes, the lack of information, of this type of information that's available in this industry, he goes, this is why I've struggled and this is why I'm failing.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's one of the beauties of what Legacy Farmer is, because it brings business tools into the business of agriculture that for whatever reason we get so caught up in just, oh, I'm going to plant this kind of corn seed or I want to go buy these kind of bulls. Well, nobody cares if you don't have the backside of things put together. It doesn't matter what you're doing outside.
Yeah. And what's crazy too, man, and it always triggers me because like when I was in the bank, coffee shop talk back in 2012 and 2013 was how many bushels of corn are you raising or how many bushels of wheat are you raising, because prices were so high. But the thing is, though, is everybody wanted to brag about that back then. But then when prices start to roll over, everybody still brag. Like, you don't go to the coffee shop and hear, what are you going to profit this year?
Yeah.
Like, you don't hear those types of conversations. That's not happening. What are you doing for tax planning this year? What's your strategy here? Have you had the crucial conversation with your kids about how you're going to leave your assets to them and what your estate plan looks like? Like, those conversations are not happening.
No, I mean, it's so surface level. The most of the stuff that's out there, like you said, it's, how many bushels did you do this year? Well, I mean, were you running a 22% profit margin or did you lose money this year?
Yeah, exactly. And
like,
the classic, oh man. And the classic thing that we always ask people when they fill out an application, how much money did you make last year or lose? Oh, I broke even. Like, that's what everybody says. But minutes before that, though, they say, yeah, I have no idea where I'm at financially. My bookkeeping is literally scribbling shit on a piece of paper. And that's how I make my strategic multi-million-dollar business strategy.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
You don't break even in this business. You lose 100,000 or you make 100,000.
Yep. And that is, and if you don't know the answer and you say break even, well, all that tells us is, yeah, you lost money last year and you probably lost money the last 10 years before that too, but you wouldn't know. You have no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man.
And
So
if
lots
you're
of prop.
if you're the person that's lost money for the last 10 years, don't be scared to come into this group, because like there's no egos involved. Like
Yeah.
this program is going to make you better.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's great about it, the two man is it's been massively valuable for me as a person too, because growing up in Western Kansas, I knew wheat and cattle. Like that's all I thought farming, that's all it was for me. And to have people come in from Southern California all the way up to where, Jay Baxter's at in Delaware. I didn't even know there were farms. I had no idea there were big operators up there. I would never have guessed it. I'm like, that's just city folk up there. But to see the difference in the operations, and some of our members are worth $15 million. Some of them are worth 100 grand, and they're just trying to get started. And that's what's great about it, is there's no ego in between. And you do have the person that's, built up a solid net worth and has done business the right way, helping out the guy that's just trying to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough to put a price on that. How valuable do you think that is for somebody that's been struggling for 10 years, like you talked about?
Oh, it's unmeasurable, really. I mean,
Yeah.
and like you said, I mean, there's guys in every industry. There's people in every business position, from big, small, in between. You know, the guys that want to have $10 million worth of ground, and the guys that just want to make 100,000 a year and spend more time with their kids.
Yeah.
Like, it really don't matter what your goals are, as long as you're willing to move forward. There's people here that will help you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I think a lot of people have stories because of where we grew up, that just because people don't share information in their small communities, like the type of information that we share in Legacy Farmer, they think it doesn't exist then anywhere.
Right.
The idea of being a guy that's worth, $250,000, and you're kind of just getting started and you got a little bit of equity and you're trying to get to that $10 million operation. The idea that there's a $10 million farmer out there that is willing to help you and even get on the phone with you and have conversations and help you break through, one, building the business, but also the mental breakthroughs that you're going to have to go through as well. Because the guy that has a $250,000 business is not the same guy that's built a $10 million operation.
No.
Not by a long shot. So I think that's what's so cool about our group, is there's no ego. There's zero of that. And everybody is willing to help each other. If you, like you said, you show up and you walk the path and you step forward and you do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we get on those coaching calls and, pulling up people's balance sheets and looking at stuff. And I mean, like you said, we've seen it all from 10 million to 200,000. And it doesn't matter. I mean, we're just all here to get better. And when you have these kind of resources and this kind of community, like, it will move you forward in a long. I mean, I have an ag business degree, and I didn't learn any of this stuff in school.
None of this.
No. I mean, we learned accounting 101, first in, first out, and blue ocean theory and red ocean theory. Like, nobody taught us tax strategy or, just finding the leaks in your operation. Like, you didn't learn anything about business operations.
Yeah. And what's crazy too, man, is like a lot of the members, when we come in and get farmer metrics set up for them, and they understand where the bank's at and how the type of leverage that the bank has on them, but we're, the idea with some of them, man, when I talk about, hey man, you need to negotiate this interest rate. They got you at 5.5. I can tell by what your overall leverage position is with the bank that you're a grade A client and you need to be getting 4. And then some of them say, wait, you can negotiate? Like you can do this? And it goes back to like what you're saying. I just feel lucky to have a banker.
Right.
Just absolutely blows my mind.
I mean, whenever you're doing business, everything's negotiated. I mean, most of these guys negotiate all of their sales all year long, but they won't go negotiate with the bank.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and it's a mental block because nobody's ever told them. And until now, I mean, there was nobody out there to share this information.
Yeah. And what's great, I recorded a podcast earlier today to run as an episode, and I talked about, how I left the banking industry because I wasn't fulfilled personally, right? I saw my parents lose absolutely everything. And I saw the identity shift that my dad had to make from being a cattleman for 40 years of his life to, doing whatever he needs to be done. And the shift that they had to go through. But that's just kind of the crazy thing about it all is seeing the members and understanding that my time in the bank was actually the most valuable asset we have here. And like, I did not like it because I did not feel like I was fulfilling my purpose. I didn't like working the 9 to 5. I didn't like having a boss or anything. And I walked out of that experience not thinking that I would ever use it again, right? Like, so grateful I'm out of the bank. And it turns out to be like the silver bullet that all of our members needed.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy how when you have experiences in life and at the time you think they're miserable and then you look back and you're like, wait a minute, I really learned a lot there that, it wasn't meant to serve me then, but here 6, 7, 8 years later, like, okay, that lesson is serving me now.
I see why I went through it.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Well, man, last question for you. You've learned a lot of stuff here and you've made the investment to be here now. You're rolling into year 2, and I hope you're here for 5 years. But if you're not, my question is the experiences, the tools, the systems, and everything you've gotten here, do you think it has dramatically shifted the trajectory of the rest of your life and really who Stuart is as a businessman over the next several decades of your career?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just coaching and mentoring is it's so valuable. I mean, it's hard to even put a price tag on it. I mean, if I never showed up again, I can promise you my experience up today in Legacy Farmer is going to shape the next 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, aside from just the mentorship and the coaching, right? But what about the business tools like Farmer Metrics? Like, if that's all you left here with, is how would that impact your operation over the next several decades?
I mean, tremendously. I mean, just the confidence and the information of knowing exactly where you're at, whether it's with the bank or just where you're at this year. And, maybe you do need to spend money at the end of the year for taxes, but not everybody does. But
Yeah.
a lot of people spend money like they think they need to.
Yeah. And they don't really know for sure either. And then it
Nope.
just confuses them anymore because they're like, okay, here I am being told to spend money, but I have $0 in my bank account and I
Yeah.
can't afford to take my family to the lake for a weekend.
Right.
And I've worked 80-hour weeks for the past 52 weeks straight.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to figure that out. So just crazy, man. Well, Stuart, man, I appreciate you taking the time and having this conversation with me today and sharing, your story and everything. Is there any last words that you want to say?
Oh, if you're on the fence, just jump in and do it. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thanks for being here.
You bet.